see this okay? Can y'all see this okay?
Yes.
Okay. Let me introduce myself by saying hello. My name is Lindsey. I am a biology grad student. I got my bachelor's uh, in fall of 2019 in biology with a double minor in chemistry and Spanish. Um, so my project is on koalas, and their ability to eat these toxic eucalyptus leaves. Oh, come on. Okay, there we go. So here's some quick facts about koalas. They are hyper specialists, meaning they are geared perfectly for eating a specific type of vegetation. Um, they only eat eucalyptus leaves. I mean, there's a couple of things here and there that they'll munch on, but for the most part, they'll eat eucalyptus leaves. Now, they are marsupials. Most people will call them a koala bear, but they are not a bear. They are a marsupial, much like opossums and kangaroos. They have that pouch. Their young is typically born premature. The young tend to be in that pouch for about 6 months, and then they spend 6 months with its mother on its mother's back. They are typically solitary animals. They only meet basically for mating. Other than that, they pretty much live in solitude. Um, they're found throughout Australia, Queensland, New South Wales, and Victoria. The source that I had said as many as 85,000 koalas, but there was another source that said 45,000. They're both. I think a lot of it has to do with change due to the bushfires that happened last year. So, but for the most part, they seem to be doing okay. They have a decent lifespan at 13 to 18 years compared to another marsupial, kangaroos, who do live on average of 6 years. They do eat eucalyptus leaves. As I mentioned, there are over 700 species of eucalyptus leaves, but they only stick to a few. There's actually one really cool eucalyptus plant where it's called the rainbow eucalyptus, and it's like the bark is different colored rainbow, and you can tell the age of the bark based on the color. It's like when it's green, it's fresh bark. When it's brown, it's older bark, and so they can kind of detect that. But one thing that's important to note is that eucalyptus leaves are very, very toxic. So here's an example of a eucalyptus tree. They have a variety of toxins that are listed here: lignans, tannins, terpenes, phenols. They also have cyanide in them, which, as most of you know, cyanide poisoning is very deadly. It it's very, very difficult to treat. But we do use eucalyptus oil in a variety of medications. It's used in cough and cold medications. Uh, Aborigines actually use it as an antiseptic and like antibacterial, antifungal. It can also be used in cosmetics. I have a friend that has like a bath bomb that has eucalyptus scent to it. It's also used in creams to relieve joint pain, and sometimes it's even found in mouthwash. So in small doses, it is okay for people to have, but it's very toxic to most other creatures. However, to humans, it can be toxic. Here are some of the signs that you can have with eucalyptus poisoning. You have hypersalivation, where you're over salivating, you're drooling, vomiting, diarrhea, depression, and muscle weakness. And these are some of them. I mean, unfortunately, these do look like normal symptoms to a lot of different things. However, one of the key indicators is the fact that the onset of symptoms is so rapid, it can happen in as little as 10 minutes. There was actually one person that they started having symptoms within 5 minutes of ingesting eucalyptus or eucalyptus oil. There is this case of the 6-year-old boy. He was diagnosed with status epilepticus, meaning he started having grand mal seizures 10 minutes after having 10 milliliters of eucalyptus oil. He also unfortunately, like with poisoning like this, the treatment is more about treating the symptoms. Sometimes you can do a kidney flush, liver flush, but for the most part with these things, you're gonna not really be able to get rid of it. Sometimes people go into comas, they will have a central nervous system shut down, and it usually happens within a span of couple days to 24 hours, roughly. There was another case of another 3-year-old boy who had as little as 5 milliliters of of eucalyptus oil, and he also went into seizure mode and had grand mal seizures. Luckily, both these little boys survived, but it was a very, very close call. So it's very toxic, especially at 30 milliliters, but as little as 4 to 5 milliliters of the oil can be toxic. So if eucalyptus is so toxic, how can koalas eat eucalyptus? Well, there's a couple of different reasons. So research suggests it has to do with their genome. One of the cool things that I found while researching this is that they actually have a gene that codes for detoxifying proteins, but it's twice as long in koalas as compared to humans. This actually was thought to be an accident a long time ago where the sequence duplicated itself. Environmental pressures and evolutionary pressures actually kept it around because then it made them into their hyper specialists so that they could focus on eating only eucalyptus, which since most creatures can't eat it, it was not as much of a battle for resources. The problem with this is that eucalyptus does not have a high what's the word a nutritional value, but we'll get into that later. So koalas can also eat eucalyptus because they have a special gut flora inside them that helps really break down the toxins. However, a lot of times baby koalas or joeys are not born with this gut flora. So how do they get it? They have to eat their mother's pap. What is pap? It's poop. That's right. They eat their mother's poop in order to get that gut flora so they can break down those toxins that you can find in eucalyptus. The other thing that they do is they stay with their mothers for as long as a year. They do that 6 months on their back so they can learn which eucalyptus leaves to eat, because some obviously are more toxic than others, and some have more nutritional values than others. So by watching their mother eat, they can figure out how to eat these eucalyptus plants. They also have these really large noses that can sniff out toxins, or they can also sniff out things that have kind of an herbal quality to it. A lot of times they'll have that minty smell, and koalas can detect that pretty easily. I mean, that they have that very large spoon-shaped nose specifically designed for that. And they have a tendency to choose the plants with higher nutrient levels, so that they can make more proteins. And then they'll avoid the leaves that have higher levels of cyanide and tannins, lignans, and everything that's not really going to help them. These koalas can be very, very selective of what they eat. They're gonna find what's gonna have the most water in it, the most nitrogen in it. The thing is, koalas spend 22 hours a day sleeping because their metabolism is so slow. Because these eucalyptus leaves do not have a high nutritional value, so they're gonna eat up to 2 pounds of these leaves a day. So they have to, if they're gonna eat 2 pounds a day for only maybe 2 hours a day, they're going to want to pick the ones that have high nitrogen compounds, low in toxins, so that they're going to spend as little energy as possible devouring these things. So then we're going to go into a little bit of a summary. The koala is not a bear. It is a marsupial, meaning it has a pouch. It is a non-placental mammal, and their young are born a little bit prematurely. They're located in Australia. Their name actually originates from an Aboriginal word meaning lack of water. So that, because they get most of their water from the eucalyptus plant, they don't actually spend a ton of time drinking water. And they do tend to eat some eucalyptus with cyanide, in it, but they do tend to avoid it. But sometimes it's unavoidable. And then eucalyptus is, of course, it's it's a plant. It does have some medicinal uses in cold, flu medicine, muscle joint relief, even some mouthwash. Sometimes it's used in cosmetics, but it's, as I said, it's very, very toxic. As little as 4 milliliters could prove to be very, very deadly. And it doesn't have a high nutrient value, but because the good news is, even though it doesn't have a high nutrient value, there's not going to be as many organisms going to try to eat it. So that's why koalas are able to get enough nutrients out of it, because they don't have to compete for as many resources. Koalas are able to eat these things because of their genome that codes for their ability to sniff out the good plants, quote unquote. They have their gut flora, which can break it down, that they get their gut flora from eating their mother's pap. And then they also have a genome that codes for more detoxifying proteins, so that way they can break them down. However, one thing that's very important to note is that this genome leaves them with a very, very weak genome. They have a tendency to be more prone to cancers and to a bunch of other diseases that are actually really, really susceptible to a retrovirus similar to HIV, because they cannot fight them off. And the other thing that will happen is that when the koalas are in captivity and they're sick, when a vet is trying to give them medication, because of these detoxifying proteins that they have, there's so many of them, and they're so strong, is that they're going to break down these medications before it has a chance to take effect. So it's very difficult to treat these guys when they get sick. So for the most part, it's a very tough balance. But despite that, they still have a fairly long lifespan of up to 18 years, because they have adapted, they have co-evolved with the eucalyptus plant, so that way they can survive. Even though eucalyptus has definitely increased their toxins, koalas have increased their ability to eat them. And that's about it. These are my sources, and I will now take questions.
Well, that was pretty fun. They don't look particularly bright. Is that maybe why they evolved as to eat? Only those leaves, because the last picture didn't.
Yeah, I know. I found that. I'm like, that looks like a meme.
So do they deal, well, I guess it's going outside of it, but how much do they have to deal with predators? And
they do deal with quite a few predators. One of the biggest predators they have is dingoes. Luckily, they stay up in the trees and avoid them, but occasionally they'll fall out of the trees, and then they're very slow moving creatures. So if they get on the ground, they're very, very likely to be eaten.
so they might have a really slow metabolism that probably allows them to eat not very nutritious stuff, basically, maybe.
Yeah.
I think wasn't that what pretty much happens with our sloths also?
Yeah, so that was the other one that I considered talking about. Sloths are very similar in this, even though they both live in different habitats. They're both very slow moving. They have that slow metabolism, but they're both, I think, if I remember correctly, sloths are also hyper specialists. I don't know exactly what their diet consists of, because I haven't looked into it, but it's a very similar concept.
Oh, okay. Could you put us back to all people mode?
Yeah.
Just so I can see what we're doing. I don't know if Nick came back.
Was my presentation long enough? I was really trying not to rush it.
No, it was fine. It was actually be a good one to show my high school students, since I think they will, just because of the type of talk it is, they'll be more excited about it, not over their head too much, if that makes any sense.
They may be grossed out about the poop thing.
It'd be good for them though. So I don't know if Nick made it back. Apparently there was a fire alarm at Thompson.
Yeah.
So I don't think he made it back.
Did Taylor go? Because I have Taylor listed to go as well today.
Taylor already went.
Okay, good. Then that's everybody for today.
You know, did you miss it?
Yeah, I did. That's my bad.
Okay. Did you get something to eat?
No, my dog really had to go out. She was freaking out here. So.
Okay. All right. So who's all up on deck for next